I've been in the principal seat of administration at least the last 20 years. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
What's happening, beautiful people? My name is Troy LaRaviere. I am a lifelong Chicagoan, son of the South Side, graduate of Dunbar Vocational High School, class of '87. I grew up in Bronzeville, back of the yards, Washington Park, Inglewood, and over close to Chatham. I've been a teacher in Chicago Public Schools. I've been an assistant principal, a dean of students, a principal. I'm a father of a Chicago Public School student, and I'm currently the president of the Chicago Principals and Administrators Association.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Abdul Muhammad. I am a lifelong educator. I've been in education for 29 years. 25 of those years have been in Chicago. I was a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in some of or the most challenging environments in the city of Chicago. And I've been able to transform all of those environments that I've been in working with our young Black children in Chicago. And I'm affectionately known to my students as the greatest rapper alive. I just want to put that out there in the universe.
Oh, the greatest rapper alive. Say what? Oh, you in the studio, so you're going to have to spit something for us on the mic. But, you know, we can do that a little later. So each of you all have shared your experience. I would like to know, how did you get into education?
Each one of us?
Yes, come on with it.
So I wasn't even thinking about getting into education. I didn't even think about going to college.
Okay.
I actually went to the Navy after high school because I didn't think college was a thing for me. But I had a girlfriend at the time who went to I was at Dunbar, she was at Whitney Young. We both graduated. I went to the Navy. She went to the University of Illinois. I get out the Navy, and she kept pushing me to try and go to college. And eventually I did.
Okay.
She handed me the autobiography of Malcolm X, and watching how Malcolm sort of rose from some of the lowest depths a human being can be in to what he became kind of was like a blueprint for me. Like, if he could do it, because remember, I didn't think college was my thing. I thought I might fail out. So it was like, you know, I might be able to, it gave me some hope.
Okay.
Long story short, first semester, straight A's, second semester, straight A's, third semester, straight A's. And it was I remember that third report card. It was my first semester, sophomore year. And I'm looking at it, like, I got straight A's at the University of Illinois, flagship institution of the state, and I almost didn't go to college.
Wow.
Right? It was like, why did I have such a low assessment of my own academic potential?
Yeah.
And I thought back to my experience as a Chicagoan, but also as a Chicago public school student, where not a soul talked to me about going to college. Not a soul, for the most part, expressed any interest or tried to encourage me, like saw that potential in me. And that was the moment I decided I was going to change my major to education, and get back to your question, and become a teacher. And the thinking was that the kids who come through my classroom are not going to leave my classroom not understanding their own intellectual ability the way I didn't understand mine when I came out of CPS.
That's powerful.
And so that's why I became a teacher, and then, of course, an administrator. And then you begin to realize it ain't just teachers that are the issue. Like, the people above teachers in the district office are putting some challenges in front of the teachers and in front of the principals that are making it very difficult for them to help our young people. And that's one of the reasons we're here today.
I hear your passion. Next person, what is your why? I'll put it that way.
My why in education. Well, I never wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to go into law.
Okay.
But I graduated from Whitney Young, and shortly after graduating, I had to make some money. I couldn't afford college. So what I decided to do was go to cosmetology school.
Okay.
Save up some coins, but then I decided to have a family. One thing I remember is that I love reading, I love learning, and somehow I connected with one of my favorite teachers by visiting a church, and her name was Burl Guy Hawkins.
Okay.
And when I met with her, she said, "Why don't you think about going into education?" So I said, well, I was a good student, I'll try it. I went for an interview to be a teacher assistant, became a teacher, fell in love with special education, went back to school, got my special education degree, and I knew that I could make a difference in other kids' lives. I knew, like, growing up, seeing kids with special needs, I had a big heart because there's no limits to what kids can do but the limits we place upon them.
Ooh.
So that's why I'm here, to keep standing up for our children in Chicago Public Schools.
Love it, love it, love it.
My why for becoming an educator is because I always wanted to give something back to my community. I always wanted to give something back to my people. You know, like Troy said, I had an epiphany when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X as well. I was a junior in high school, and Alex Haley is such a proficient writer that as I'm reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, I would get up towards the bottom of the page and I couldn't wait to turn the page. It was just that good of a book. So, you know, as Troy said, seeing Malcolm and how his life was transformed, this led me to want to become a Muslim like Brother Malcolm, right? So I became a Muslim. And when my first year of college, like most college students, you know, like when I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to school, went to college, and was just on campus, had no idea of what I wanted to do with my life, right? As a lot of our young people. And when I started to engage and work in my community, now my mother always told me I should have been a teacher, right? Always from day one. But you know, most times mothers tell you that because they just want you to have a job and have some money in your pocket, right?
Yes.
So, but when I got to school and I was inspired by the autobiography of Malcolm X and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that's what made me choose the major of education. And I chose the major of education, and I was able, and this became my passion. I didn't know at the time, but this became my passion. In the city of Chicago, I was awarded the Teacher of the Year for the city of Chicago, nominated twice for the Golden Apple, featured in Who's Who among American high school teachers 4 or 5 consecutive times.
Nice.
Because this was the passion that I had, as Dr. Gibson said, for giving the best to Black children who are neglected on the South and West Side, who don't have pathways and don't have opportunities, who don't have choices, who don't have people encourage them to go to college or go to trades. Somebody has to be there to guide our young people. Everybody complains about them.
Yeah.
We have so much to say when they downtown. We have so much to say when they do something wrong or when they act in a way or they sag their pants. We have a lot to say about that. But what do we have to say about the people who are in the schools daily, shaping the minds of these young Black people, our people, and directing them to pathways to help them to transform their lives? So this was my passion, my why, my reason was I wanted to give something back to my community.
I love it. I love it. Next person, what is your why?
I've been extremely blessed as far as my educational journey. Attended Marcus Garvey Elementary School on 130 Morgan, and I had at least, which is not the norm, and most definitely not really happening now, in my tenure from kindergarten, 8th grade, I had at least 6 African American teachers.
What?
And it wasn't just PE. You know, in the assistant principal, Mr. Haley, who's the founder of Jackie Robinson West Little League, was my assistant principal, and I just had an amazing time in school. So I actually just loved it.
That's good.
And I'm a proud graduate of, and I have to represent Old King High School, not King College Prep.
Okay.
Put that out there.
Okay.
Jaguar for real.
The original.
Yeah, original. Class of 86. I still wear my state and city championship ring.
I see.
No doubt. But I actually majored in political science when I was in college.
Okay.
I thought I wanted to go to law school, but I took a lot of education courses. So when I graduated, I started subbing. I was provisional sub. And the more and more I did it, the more and more I found my purpose.
Nice.
And the thing about it was that what really led me was at Jackie Robinson and that King, at Marcus Garvey and that King, we didn't even know the difference of children. They just loved children. And it was my emotionally safe space. It was a space for me to play sports. It was a space for me to interact with adults. It was a space for me to interact with other students. When I was at King High School, I was in the Principal Scholars Program, all that good stuff. But by me being an athlete, we was just a part of the student body.
Yeah.
So in all my years of being an educator, I never looked at it as a job. I just went to school every day. And that's how I looked at it. But my why developed in my leadership situations. I was at Crane for a year. I ran something called the Achievement Academy. Then I went to the role, better known as Robeson, and for about 8 years. But also, then I went to Dunbar. My journey has always been with CPS's most marginalized children, just like Brother Abdul, just like Sister Gibson. Our journeys are similar in a lot of ways because we always had challenging environments. So that's one of the reasons why we were looked at the way we were looked at, we were challenged the way we were challenged, we were targeted the way we were targeted, is because our whys have always been with the most challenging children. And we consistently met our moments of truth. We consistently had vulnerable moments where we have had to make a decision. Am I going to do what they want me to do? I'm going to do what I know is right.
Yeah.
And I always say this, I don't need permission to do what God told me to do.
Period.
And he told me to serve children, and that was my why.
I love that you that's a great segue because that is one of my next questions. Just more so what being in having your love or passion to bring about change, and we do and we are aware of these challenges. So what are give me a time where you had to make a really hard decision that you knew they were going to have something to say about it, but it felt right in your heart or it felt right for you to do.
Well, my first moment of truth.
Yes. I like that better, moment of truth.
I actually have to admit that I failed. When I was at Robeson, I had a very large school, about 1,800 kids at the time. And Christy, I had 30 girls with a baby. And
Woo.
yeah, and they all missed like 30 days of school because of the child care situation.
Yeah.
So, and believe it or not, all of the CT or vocational shops were taken out of Robeson, which is a school in England. I still don't understand that, but they were all taken out.
On purpose.
Oh, well, by design, I would say the same thing. What I did was I partnered with African American gentleman who actually owned these transformational buildings across the street, and we decided to put a daycare center at the bottom.
Okay.
And I partnered with a group in Hyde Park to actually run the daycare.
Nice.
In addition to that, he had solar panels on top of the building. This is like 2010. So I was going to put that program inside of Robeson. I'm like, the brothers going to have something, the girls going to be moms, and they can have access points and pathways. Make a long story short, I asked for permission. I asked CPS, could I do this? And they were like, oh, no. I asked the mayor's office, could I do it? They were like, oh, no. And I was like, why are we not doing this? This is what these kids need.
Yeah.
So my first moment of truth, I did not stand up for children. I wasn't courageous enough to make sure they got what they needed. And it always haunted me.
Which mayor was it?
You said 2010, right?
Think about Daily, I believe. Daily Design. So to fast forward it, when I got to Dunbar enrollment had dropped to like 230 students.
Mm-hmm.
It was the programs were not flourishing, and they didn't have things in place where children can have access points and pathways. So the mayor's office and Congressman Rush proposed that they had this program called Chicago Builds. And when they put this program in, Chrissy, that was my moment of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And in my moment of truth, I was being forced to support this program that I knew was not going to serve children.
Okay.
And I had to just be very vulnerable and tell the district, like, this doesn't support children. I'm not going to support it.
Right.
It's not giving access points and pathways, and I'm not going to do it. But, I can remember being in the LSC meeting and tears coming out my eyes. And I said, although they may slay me, I'm still going to trust them. So I just did what God told me to do. As a result, we put in 3 different programs in Dunbar that CPS did not support financially. And know that I asked them, I just went and did what needed to be done. So my moment of truth was I actually failed children the first time, but the second time, I most definitely got it right. And I'm very proud of the things that we've done as far as working with the community, working with the Alumni Association to make sure that those children got access points and pathways. So I want to be on record of there was a time as an educator I did fail children because I didn't have the courage to stand up.
Okay.
But when it came up the second time, not again.
Understand. Thank you for your authentic answers and just being truthful in regards to that. Mr. Troy, you look like you ready because I know you were in the news. You brung light to a lot of different things that was going on with Emmanuel. So same question.
So, if I can give a little context first, let's kind of give people know like why we all together and what our commonality is.
Yes, please share
us. If all four of us at one point in time were outstanding principals.
You're still outstanding principal.
With principals, all four of us have outstanding records as principal. I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
Gerald was a principal. You've been educated for 30-something years, right?
Right.
Abdul for 29 years. Kimberly has been an outstanding educator for a very long time. She was relatively new to the principal's position, but had an outstanding first. She ran a school as a resident principal where the principal was absent and killed it. So she had a trajectory. Her first year showed she had a trajectory if they would have left her in a position to be an outstanding principal, to have an outstanding long track record.
We still don't give that credit anyway, okay?
And when I was a principal, my record spoke for itself as well. I was removed in 2016 as a result of my advocacy for students. All three of the principals in this room were removed this year.
Okay.
Despite those outstanding records. And so part of the theme here is why did these three Black principals and at least 5 other Black principals who had outstanding records get removed by CPS management this year? Why were there only 10 principals out of 10 principals removed? 8 of them were Black. Now, Black people don't make up 80% of principals.
No,
they make up about 44%.
Okay.
80% of those removed were Black. Not only that, 70% were Black men. Let me say that again, and let me add another stat. Only 8% of principals are Black men. Let me say it again. Only 8% of principals are Black men, but 70% of the principals who were removed were Black men. And you add the other was Kimberly Gibson. Yes. That's 80% Black people. And so it is obvious that there's a pattern and practice of discrimination aimed towards not just Black principals, but outstanding Black principals. Principals who are, Gerald was looked at as a leader amongst Black male principals and Black female principals. He was one of the folks that Black principals went to for advice. Abdul Muhammad, the same. And I'd imagine even Kimberly in her short tenure, particularly with that resident principal piece, had a lot of people coming to her. So they're removing outstanding people who are bringing, everywhere Abdul Muhammad is going, grades go up.
Yeah.
Right? Where Gerald goes, grades go up. Where Kimberly goes, grades go up. Graduation rates go up. Fights and bad behavior go down. Everywhere these people have gone in their careers, they have excelled. And somehow, in 1 year, these 3 Black principals and 5 other ones are all removed by CPS. That's outstanding. So that's the context that we are here in. That is the general picture that surrounds our appearance and our conversation here today. So that if folks were not aware of that. So getting back to your question, and please repeat the question. So
sure.
Like my moment of truth, was it?
No. It was centered around when you had to make a hard decision. But before you do that, can you give the names of the other principals if you know them?
Charles Smith, Jamaica Nelson was one. The brother at Hyde Park, Antonio Ross was another one, and those are ones that come to mind right now.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that their names are heard and said for the record.
Outstanding educators.
All right. So the question was, what was your hardest decision that you had to make, knowing that it would go against the rules and regulations that are set in place, but you knew in your heart that this has to be done, or this is what needs to be done?
Oh, that's a pretty long story. I'll try to make it short as possible. I had a situation kind of like Gerald where I failed first. Where, you know, my first year as principal was Rahm Emanuel's first year as mayor.
Okay.
Right. And so I come in just trying to make sure my first year as principal is a good year, and I did. Second year was outstanding. After my second year, when I walked in to blame, 25% of the black students were meeting standards. 2 years later, 75% were meeting standards.
Okay, those are some good numbers.
And I did some very specific things using the resources we had in order to make that happen. My third year, all those resources, actually the end of the second year, we were told all those resources were getting cut. That was the year budgets got cut all across CPS. 2013, when they came in with sacrifice-based budgeting, SBB. They call it student-based budgeting, but that is a misnomer. It is sacrifice-based budgeting, because every year you got to figure out what you're going to sacrifice, what student service is going to have to get sacrificed this time. Others might call it sabotage-based budgeting, because it seemed like every year they were finding a way to sabotage our efforts to get our children, our students, our scholars, our learners, the things that they needed to grow and develop. So every year we seem to be sabotaged by our budget. So 2013 was the first big budget cut. And I remember before that, I had this moment where during the teacher strike, a reporter put a microphone up to my mouth and I waved her off because I didn't want to speak. I knew that a lot of the things the Emanuel administration were doing were wrong, but I was afraid for my job. I didn't want to say what I knew to be the truth because, you know, I'm nervous, I'm fearful, I'm uncomfortable, right? I know, just like Gerald, he knew what was good for kids, right? But there are these forces that, you know, if you do what's right, they're coming down on you. And if I could just get away from the question just a minute, that's the heart of all of this, because this is not just about principals who are being removed. This is about every principal in the city of Chicago, because these principals were removed because the position is completely vulnerable and unprotected. Principals are the least protected group of people in the entire system, and they're the leaders of the school. Think about it. Think about the leader of our country, right? The president, right? That is the most protected position on earth. Right? So institutions protect, if they want the institutions that they lead to succeed, they protect the position so that the only way a person can be removed is for good cause. So that you cannot remove good people for any reason, right? So in CPS, it's the exact opposite. The principal is the least protected position. So every principal knows that they can get removed. All that CPS has to do is just go look in your budget for some minor error and that they'll remove you, right? So because of that, when it's time to make good decisions for young people, right, you know that, and you know that the district management does not want that decision, that they are making a decision that's going to take away from young people, and you need to say something. Being in that vulnerable position makes it much less likely that you are going to advocate for what works for your children, for what develops your children, for what helps your children to learn. And so every parent, every citizen should be concerned and outraged about that, because the people who are leading your schools are in positions that are so vulnerable that they don't feel the ability. They don't feel encouraged. They don't feel like they would get the backing. They feel like it's a threat to their career to do what's right for your children. No leader of any school should be in that position. So it's not just about these three leaders. These three leaders just got the worst of what was done to all principals, and all principals are put in this vulnerable position. All principals feel like they can't do what's right for kids. All principals have to go through some kind of backlash for doing what's right. Sometimes it's you get called out. Sometimes you get a write-up. Sometimes they just harass you until you just want to quit. And sometimes they'll remove you. So this isn't just about principals who are being removed. This is about good principals all over the city who can't do good things for children because they are in the least protected position in this school system. So Gerald knew he was in that position when he was trying to get that daycare for those young people.
Right.
Right. And that same force that stopped me from speaking to that reporter stopped him from pushing from that daycare center. Am I speaking this right, Gerald?
True.
Right. And so I waved that reporter off, and I just remember feeling, and then I remember asking her to come into school, and I told her I'll speak to her off, like you can't camera. Record me. Yeah. You cannot record me. And I started showing her some things that the Emmanuel administration was doing, but I wouldn't put my name on it.
Okay.
Right. And I just remember leaving that interaction feeling like I was not a man. Because I was not willing to put my own name on my own truth. Right? Throw the stone and hide your hand. Right? Yeah. That's what I was doing. Trying to get this report, get a stone to here. Here, report, here's a stone. Throw it for me. Ooh. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Like, that's low. That ain't what a man does. But there I was doing it. And I remember having a couple more, some things, like going to the union and see if I can get the union, the principals union. We weren't a union at the time, it was an association, but it was the closest thing we had to a union. I remember going to them. I'll never forget this. They were having like a auxiliary meeting. And it was at this place, and everybody was eating, and they was eating good, drinking. And they were talking about all the awful things that Rahm Emanuel was doing, and I was messing up the schools. And I remember getting up and I said, the next time the mayor has because they was like, and they're also talking about how he lies so much about the impact of what he does on our schools. Like, we could, like, and it still happens today. Principals are like, what principals? Because they're like, principals love this, and principals love what we're doing, and principals are for this policy. And we're like, what principals did he talk to? Right. Right. And it still happens today. But back then it was like, they were doing the same thing. And I said, you know what, next time he gets up at one of them press conferences and spouts out all of those lies, we should have a press conference of our own to set the record straight. Right. So this is my first meeting with the Principals Association, right? So I'm thinking they're going to be like, yeah, you're right. No. And the room got quiet. And they looked at me and they said, ain't you scared of losing your job? Yeah. All they got to do is go in. I mean, they said, all you got to do is go in your budget. They'll find something wrong because they don't give us enough staff to be able to keep everything right. Going. Yeah. And I felt so dejected, right? I'd already had this moment where I was a coward. Then I'm trying to get up some courage to get other people who are like mine to make sure. I'm not willing to do it on my own, but maybe if we all did it together. Yeah. And now the people in the one place that I could find where principals' interests should be represented, the Principals Association, the president, the auxiliary president did not want to do anything. I had never felt so low in my life. And I remember going home and reading this book to my son. He was about 4 years old at the time. And the book was called One. And the book was about colors, right? And each color was a character in the book. They're like represented as like splotches. Yeah. Right? And so the main characters are blue and red. And blue is just this cool little color. He's just enjoying himself. And red comes up to him and starts bullying him. And he's like, red is hot, blue is not. And blue starts feeling bad. You know, and I'm reading to my son. This is a very important part of the context. I'm reading to my son, right? My wife is on one side of the bed. I'm on the other. My son's popped down in the middle and I'm reading. And my wife knows that I'm thinking about saying something about what's going on with Emmanuel, but she's like, look, I work for the city too. And he is vindictive. So if he gonna come after me too. Right. So I'm reading this book and blue is feeling bad and the other colors won't help blue. And the more red bullies blue and nobody else helps blue, red gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And he's like this monster, right? Yeah. So everybody's oppressed now. Red is just running the yard, bullying everybody. And then this new character pops in. The new character is not a color. The new character is a number. Oh. The new character is the number one. Oh. Number one comes in and he's got all this charisma and he's talking to the colors and building relationships with them, talking to them and having a good time. But red ain't around. And then red comes around and he sees everybody enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
And he just yells, stop. Right? And he realizes, stop. And all the colors stop. But one just walks over to him like,
what's up?
no, what's up? Like, no, like he stood up to him.
Right.
And then red tried to back him, he said, stop again. And one wouldn't back down. And then the other colors see one standing up and they say, me too. And another one go, me too. And they all getting behind one. And the more they stand up, the smaller red gets.
Ooh.
Right? And then, right, red the shrunk back down to size. And the book shows him getting reintegrated into the community. And then you get to the last page. Now, remember, I'm reading my son.
Yeah.
You get to the last page, and they're all enjoying themselves. And there's more characters, like 2 and 3 are there.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's a line underneath this real beautiful, peaceful scene of the colors and the numbers getting along.
Okay.
There's one line, and the line says, all it takes is one.
Ah.
Now, read that line, and I look at my son. Like, this is a book about standing up to bullies. And I'm trying to read to my son, this is a book that's an example of standing up to bullies.
Yeah.
And it says, all it takes is one.
All it takes is one.
And I know at that moment, this book ain't what's going to teach my son that lesson.
Yeah.
His father has to teach him that lesson. And so that's when I made my mind up that just like Gerald did, and then after I read it, I remember it said, all it takes is one. And then I looked over at his mother. And she knew what was up, right? She was listening. She knew what was up. And she was like, just give me a couple months to find a new job. She got a new job. And then I just started calling out everything. I wrote a piece up for the Chicago Sun-Times that I released it. The thing got read maybe 1 million times over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I just was relentless after that until they finally removed me 3 years later when they were trying to prevent me from becoming the president of the Principals Association, which they failed at doing. Does that answer the question?
It does more than answer the question. It gives a full perspective of everything in your journey so far.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to know, what is your reason why they are doing what they're currently doing as far as removing principals who have exceeded the standards?
Well, before getting a reason, if it's okay with you, I'd like the principals to kind of talk about their experience so that people can kind of hear a little bit of what they went through, because then that would make the reason make a little more sense when we get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Please go
So,
ahead.
Whoever wants to begin.
So I'll begin just to share a little bit about myself. As I shared earlier, I've been an educator for almost 30 years in the city of Chicago.
Oh, that's old as me.
And when I was in, I want to say 5th grade, and this is just a fun fact, I grew up around all white people, right, as an elementary school student. Only black person in my school was my brother, who was 2 grades above me, and the janitor. We didn't see any other black people.
Wow.
Right? So I'm in a reading class one day, and while I'm in this class, the white children spelled nigger with the Scrabble pieces, right? And this is not, like this happened all the time, but this particular day, they decided, we was playing Scrabble. They decided to spell nigger with the Scrabble pieces. So I look at the teacher as a 5th grade, as a child, right? I'm 11, 12 years old, and the teacher doesn't do anything.
So surprising.
So this was my experience as a child, right? Fast forward into me becoming an educator, right? Now I'm an educator. I've done everything as far as teach, assistant principal, and all to try to give back to my community. I started out on the west side where we are now. I started at Westinghouse, not the college preparatory school Westinghouse, but when Westinghouse was the neighborhood school, I was at Westinghouse as a teacher. My students who are adults now, they love me to death to this day from when I taught on the west side. From Westinghouse, and this is for your Chicago audience.
Okay.
From Westinghouse, I moved to the south side at CBS High School, Chicago Vocational. I was there for 6 years. And the students, if you talk to them, they say, well, CBS stands for crime, violence, and sex, because that's what was going on in the school before I got there. But as Troy said, everywhere I've gone, we transformed it. When I was at CBS, students would tell me, Mr. Muhammad, the only reason I'm coming to school is to come to your class. Once your class is over with, I'm going back home. So I was the reason that students, young Black children in Chicago, came to school every day, because I gave them what they needed. I poured into them what these Black children needed on the south side of Chicago.
Right.
From CBS, I went to Simeon. I was at Simeon with Jabari Parker and with Steve Taylor and Kendrick Nunn and these great basketball players, right? And I treated them just like I treated everybody else. They didn't get any favoritism because they were a star basketball player. They got treated like everybody else. And again, I had great relationships with the students where they wanted to be in my class, right? They wanted to learn. People say, oh, these young people, they don't want to learn. That's not true. I've taught them for 25 years. They want to learn. The question is, do we want to teach them?
Period.
From Simeon, I went to Percy L. Julian as assistant principal. Now, for people who are in Chicago, you all know Julian is in this area that we affectionately call the hundreds, right? So I'm out there, and you talking about parents coming up to the school trying to jump on children, people coming up out the neighborhood trying to fight children. You talking about people bringing guns and drugs and fights in the school every day. When I left Julian, not only did the grades get better and the graduation rate go up, the fights went all the way down. On the last day of school, the children were getting their book bags going home. The corner store that's 1 block up from Julian on 103rd, myself and the dean would ride up to the corner store at 7:45, and you got 20 young men standing outside the corner store smoking a blunt. And we at the corner store like, man, y'all need to be in school. What's up?
Right. So
we transformed Julian in the time that I was there, right?
Okay.
From Julian, I went to a school called Nancy B. Jefferson. Nancy B. Jefferson is the school that is located inside of the Juvenile Detention Center.
Okay.
They call it the Oddie Homes in Chicago. So all of the shooters, all of those people that are in the streets doing these crimes that are 17 and under, when they get locked up, they got to go somewhere.
Right.
And they go to the Juvenile Detention Center, and while they're there, they have to be educated, right?
Yes. So
I was in control of the education of these students. When I walked in the first day, it's 85% Black boys. They're walking down the hall with their hands in their pockets so they won't fight each other. So now I'm in an environment with the most at-risk students in the city of Chicago. I've been able to transform every other school that I've gone into. Now I'm in the school where not 1 or 2 are gangbangers, not 1 or 2 have done something wrong.
All of them.
Everybody there, but no parents come and saying, you know, my baby good. None. Because the reason they were there is because they did something, right? Yeah. Or multiple things in order to get locked up.
Right.
So now, while I was at Nancy B. Jefferson, which I have no regrets of anywhere I've gone, this was the first time they were able to bring all the various gangbangers in the same room together. The BDs, the GDs, the Vice Lords, the Four Corner Hustlers, the Black Souls, the Latin Kings, the EBK. Because from the day I got there, I built relationships with those brothers and building relationships with them. We were at a certain point, we could put them in the same room together. But not only did we build relationships with them, but we also made it to where they were able to graduate right from inside of the Juvenile Detention Center.
Nice.
We also, as my brother Gerald did at Dunbar, we partnered with Larry's Barber College.
Shout out to
and
Larry.
Put a barber college inside of the Juvenile Detention Center so they would be able to leave and get a job, either create a job or get a job as a barber when they left the Juvenile Detention Center.
Right, creating
an opportunity for them. So this was the work that I did right inside the place where people would say, can any good come out of Nancy B. And we brought good out of Nancy B. Jefferson. So now from Nancy B. Jefferson, now I gotta say this. While I was at Nancy B. Jefferson, I received an email. And in that email it said 1,900 Chicago public school students went to go see the play called Hamilton.
Okay.
So I'm like Hamilton. I don't know if you've seen it or if your audience has seen it. Hamilton is a phenomenal play. It's one of the greatest stage plays of all time. If you love rap music, I love rap music, right? So when I went to see Hamilton, it just blew me away, right? So I'm in jail with them, right?
Uh-huh.
They're in jail, but I have to be there every day. I have to walk through 2 line scans every day in order to get in the jail where the brothers are.
Yeah.
And there's no windows because we in jail,
right?
In certain rooms. So I'm in jail with them, right? So I'm feeling the same way they feeling. Trap. And so I see Trap, and I see this email saying 1,900 students went to go see Hamilton. So I said, man, my students can't go nowhere. We both locked up. So I reached out to the producer of Hamilton, and I asked the producer, I said, will you bring the Hamilton play to Nancy B. Jefferson?
Oh, I love it.
I worked with that producer for 2 years. At the end of that 2-year period, we brought the Hamilton play, which is one of the greatest pieces of art that has ever been written, one of them. We brought it to Nancy B. Jefferson for the students.
Love it.
After they did the play, the producer pulled me to the side and said, Mr. Muhammad, this play has only left the stage twice. Once when we brought it to the White House for President Barack Obama, and the other time is when we brought it to the students of Nancy B. Jefferson. So this is the work that I've done for the last 25 years for the children in the city of Chicago. From Jefferson, I went to Douglas, which is on the west side, right? And which we are now, and transformed Douglas in the 5 years that I was there. No principal could ever go into Douglas and transform Douglas. It's always been a thorn in the side of Chicago public schools. I went into Douglas, we brought the graduation rate up from like 65% to 82%.
Nice.
We brought the attendance rate up from like 70% to 85%. We brought the freshman on track rate up. All the good stats went up. All the bad stats went down.
As they should.
In the 5 years that I was at Douglas. But then the problem started when I got to Limblom, which is one of the top schools in the city. Even though I've transformed every school I've ever walked into, we had a group of 7 white teachers that were upset that now y'all got to understand, my listening audience, that Limblom is 75% Black. Okay. And there's a Black LSC, a local school council, that elects or selects the principal, right? Right. The Black, and it's located in Inglewood, which is a Black neighborhood, right? Right. So the Black LSC in this Black neighborhood at this Black school selected a Black man to be the principal.
It only makes sense.
It only makes sense. But what I didn't know at the time is that 90% of the teachers at Limblom are white. So there were 7 white teachers that had a problem with the Black LSC in a Black school, in a Black neighborhood, selecting a Black principal. So those 7 white teachers came up with over 83 false allegations. What? And they took those false allegations to this woman named Kelly Tarrant in the CPS law department. Kelly Tarrant did not fact check anything that these white people said. Why? They white. She used the phrase or the slogan, as we say, I'm white and I say so. They came with 83 lies. She did not fact check a single one. Yeah, she accepted everything that they said as fact. And then when I came for my part of this little process of investigation, she fact checked everything that I said. So this is the type of corruption that we're dealing with in Chicago public schools, right? This is the type of corruption that principals are afraid to stand up to. So now me going through this experience with these 7 white teachers, going to this white woman in the law department, and the woman in the law department did not use her authority. You can look at the allegations and see that they're false, right? Just by looking at them, not to mention the documentation that we provided. So this experience, it took me back to when I was in 5th grade, where you had these white students that took those Scrabble pieces and spelled out the word nigger, right? And now you got 7 white teachers at Limblom that are, in so many words, saying this nigga is not qualified to run a selective enrollment school. So they're spelling out the word nigger with these false allegations. Yeah. And they took it to this white woman in authority. and she didn't do anything, just like that white teacher didn't do anything when I was in 5th grade. So this is what gives me the
come back
passion
around
and the fight to fight Chicago public schools, fight this racist system, fight this corruption, because I'm not going to be the 5th grade student who has to sit there, and I'm not going to allow any other principal or student to have to sit and suffer racism in a racist system when somebody can come with lies that we can prove. We can sit down any day with anybody, anywhere, and prove everything that they said is false. We should not have to experience this as professional educators, but this is the type of things
with your track record
that with our track record, there has with everything that I've done in Chicago public schools over the last 25 years, no network chief, no CEO, no deputy chief has ever pulled me to the side and said, Mr. Muhammad, you know what? You're doing a great job and we appreciate what you do. It has never happened. But I didn't do it for that. I didn't do it for the accolades from those people in positions of authority.
Right.
I did it for the students. And every time I go out into the streets of Chicago, every time, without fail, this brother has been with me, I see a student. So it's not the love from the CEO that I want. It's not the love from the chief that I want. It's the love from the students and the love from the parents. That is why we do what we do.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I love the comeback around from how you started with the puzzle piece, well, scramble pieces.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the nigga. That was just powerful. Next person, who?
Kimmy,
come on, Miss Kim. Go ahead and share your story of your experience.
So my experience is traumatizing.
Okay.
But I'm gonna share this story because it needs to be heard.
All right.
First, I just want you guys to sit with this, my fans, our people. 8% of principals are Black, but 70% were removed, were Black males.
Yeah.
If you add me to the equation, 80% were Black Americans. I want you just to sit with this number, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. 8 minutes, 46 seconds. A Black male laid helpless, handcuffed on the concrete, while a white policeman knelt and pinned him down with his knee. And I want you to stay in that emotion you felt on May 25th, 2020, when we saw George Floyd murdered. He was murdered for police brutality and systemic racism. Now, I haven't experienced police brutality, but I have experienced traumatizing systemic racism in our education system. You see, I was a resident principal at Audubon. I was enjoying myself during one of the toughest years of COVID. 1 month after being a resident principal, my mentor principal took maternity leave. I didn't think I could do it. I was fresh out of school. I decided not to go for a principalship my first time and joined the Chicago Leadership Collaborative. During that year was the toughest year, so I thought. I'm dealing with kids having COVID, students, no kids in the schools.
Yeah.
Then to bring kids in March, trying to support teachers, families, and students during a national pandemic.
Yeah. The plandemic. I call that the plandemic.
Yes.
But that's another conversation.
For another day.
Mm-hmm.
But stay in that moment. And as I ended that successful year, as the only resident principal who was awarded a 4-year contract at the new school that was just renamed Harriet Tubman. Let's sit with that. Harriet Tubman, the first school renamed after a racist biologist.
Come on, Harriet.
Louis Agassiz.
Make sure we clarify. She was a resident principal awarded a 4-year contract as a principal.
Yeah.
As a contract principal. Let me state that. 10 people unanimously voted me in, and it was the first LSC with a Black woman as the LSC chair.
Nice.
So imagine me walking up into that school as a first-year contract principal on the north side, Lincoln Park, Lakeview community.
Ooh.
While the students may be considered diverse, the staff was over 90% white.
Yeah.
I felt like I was set up for failure before I even got started.
Yeah.
No support was offered to the school. They had already went through racism, I already had the students who researched the name and pushed for the name change. Yet I was there to challenge the status quo and uphold and live out Harriet Tubman being an abolitionist and making sure diversity, equity, and inclusion represented everything inside that school.
Yes.
So while I sat there, just a month in, we had a visit from the interim CEO.
Okay.
During that visit, I'll never forget the date, September 10th. It was one of the happiest days of my life and the worst days of my life.
Okay.
The CEO followed me around the school, followed me from outside and said, I'm just here to follow you because I've heard of the wonderful things you've done in 1 month as principal of Harriet Tubman. I said, I hope you had your good shoes on because I moved pretty fast. And I went to my meeting that I established, which was a weekly clinician meeting, so we could make sure that we were servicing properly our most marginalized students, students with special needs, and students of color.
Yes.
During that time, I walked and I shared some of the concerns that I had with the school, some of the needs that we had.
Yeah.
And I was told that the board would get back to me. One of those needs is our marquee still said Louis Agassiz, the white racist biologist's name. And it didn't reflect our views, our morals, or our values.
Okay.
I was told by the CEO, oh, we'll get you the money to change the marquee. A week later, I was told they didn't have any money. But in that same night of September 10th, I got a call from my husband, come to the hospital. My youngest daughter was hit and run, almost near death. Her body laid there, motionless, eyes shut, unconscious. And yet I still was sitting worried about Harriet Tubman. Those next couple of weeks were the most strenuous weeks for me.
Yes.
I had to go back into the school and continue to work from 6 to 6 every single day, getting up to support my students and to make sure that they have the things they need to be successful in school and in life. Greeting my students every day as they came in. And then trying to find ways to bring equity and diversity in the school, such as now we're 4 months in as principal.
Yes.
Now we're selling Winter Wonderland, different ways that we celebrate winter celebrations around the world. I let the students decide how they would decorate their door. We had students who had COVID, so they were kept at home. And I walked around with laptops, so everyone was included in our celebration.
Yes.
Shortly after, as I got ready to walk out the door, I looked down at my phone to check to see if I had any messages. Instead of me being celebrated for bringing diversity, there was a message. Miss Gibson, we finally got you. You won't be here long, nigger. Nigger. That's what it said.
We finally got you.
We finally got you, and you won't be here long, nigger. I looked down, remembering that I shared my phone number with my staff members in case they had a family emergency and needed to call because of COVID.
Right.
I remember all the pushback when I had listening sessions and none of them showed up to share their thoughts. I remember all the times I tried to build relationships, going around, visiting classrooms, coming in extra early, having an open door policy.
Yes.
And instead of it being met with partnership, it was met with,
resistance.
We don't have to listen to her. Who does she think she is? This Black woman principal. Instead of talking to me, they would besmirch my name, have secret meetings, organize secret meetings, using the union to unionize against a Black successful principal whose daughter laid in a hospital bed uncertain if she would live or die. I did what anybody would do that day on December 17, 2021. I called the police. I made a police report. I reported it to CPS Safety and Security, and I reported it to my chief, who was a minority. His response, make sure you put it in Aspen. That's the only response. Now we're into January. I'm raising money to make sure that marquee says Harriet Tubman.
Right.
I'm working with the alderman, the senator, and working with my parent group. And we raised the money. And on February 14th, the current CEO came to visit my school.
Again?
Pedro, no, this was his first time.
Okay.
Pedro Martinez. He was there for the photo op. He wanted to be there on Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 2, Channel 5. As I brought diversity, equity, and inclusion by bringing groups together. But instead, in March, my chief came to visit. I will never forget this day. He came in and said, Principal Gibson, do you know why I'm here? I said, hopefully, to help me with this discrimination and racism that's going on here that I've reported to you multiple times. And instead of this brother standing with me as a minority and listening, he told me, you haven't been discriminated against. This isn't racism. I sat there in that moment thinking of being called a nigger, a woman who's educated, who has a bachelor's in early childhood, a special ed degree, a master's in curriculum instruction, who's bilingual. Yo habla español muy bien, muy inteligente. And now a current doctor. My name is Dr. Gibson. Being called a nigger.
Put some respect on your name.
One of the most degrading, dehumanizing things you can do is call someone a nigger. But then what's even more is a person of minority telling you that this has nothing to do with discrimination, that you need to try to build relationships when that's all you've been doing. How can you build relationships with people who are full of hate? They don't care. They don't try to meet you halfway. Yeah. They said they wanted change, but it was a school who really wasn't ready for change. The students were ready for change. The students greeted me with love every day. Can you imagine telling your boss and your boss not believing you, doing nothing? Then you report it to every department. I reported it to the equity department. No support. I reported it to anyone who would listen. My mentors, no support. Then in May, I had a new chief, Karime Assam. I asked to speak to her separately as she was greeting me and welcoming me as she came in as the new network chief. I told her about the discrimination, the racism, being a victim of a hate crime, and nothing being done. She told me to fill out an EOCO complaint. I filled out that complaint. As we got to May, I gave feedback on 2 staff members who I sat and witnessed during IEP meetings, lying to parents about social work minutes and minutes that students can receive when it is a team decision. Ooh. I requested that these 2 clinicians be reassigned to another school because they didn't reflect the vision that I had for Harriet Tubman or the shared vision from our community.
Right.
And do you know what it was met with? See,
backlash.
That not only backlash, not only white fragility, but it was met with, Mark Twain said, a lie can circle around the world halfway before truth pull up its boots. And my truth is all of this is because white teachers do not want to be held accountable for their actions. Each one of our stories, you will hear that. At my school, it was 90% white. They got upset because I started hiring people of color, doing what it was in the new principal evaluation program, bringing diversity and equity and inclusion to the school. Right. They thought that nigga would scare me away, but I kept showing up for students. I did not refuse to come in. I kept coming, even while I was taking care of a sick child that was now in a wheelchair. And now, today, I got sicker and sicker. As you see, I'm in a wheelchair. In October, I got sick. My health failed me. I was in a hospital. And while I was in a hospital, these same staff members conspired against me, telling lies, saying I jeopardized student safety. A mother of 8 wonderful children, a mother of a student with special needs, jeopardize student safety? I think not. What was their evidence? Oh, my word, their word, white is right. That's what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Whatever a white person said is taken as the gospel of the Bible. Yeah. But a black person, just like each one of these black principals, we are guilty till we prove ourselves innocent. You see it in Mohammed case. Brother Gerald don't even know what his charges is, and you see it in my case. But when I said that I was the victim of a proven hate crime, where was my justice? We're not asking for your charity. We're asking you guys for justice to show up and stand with us. Yes. One thing you guys can do is come to the next board meeting on September 28th and stand with these black principals as we share our story collectively. We're asking for change, positive change to end this systemic racism in Chicago public schools.
When and where is that going to be at?
And again, that is going to be at the Chicago board meeting that will be held at Austin High School at 5 p.m. on the west side. Please join us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to later just give you a hug because I just, the energy, so I'm a hugger, so don't mind me. Brother Gerald, please share your story with us.
Mine was one of traumatization as well. It was one of consistent rejection, consistent abandonment, uh, consistent neglect of our most marginalized children. You know, I call it educational brutality. I call it educational malpractice. You know, and people need to know that a lot of our schools, especially in our marginalized communities, they are an educational hospice. They're underfunded, disinvested in, and it's no accident that what we're seeing in our communities, the lack of safety, is because, Chrissy, we've consistently, systemically graduated hopeless, skillless, and functional illiterate children.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they'll tell you that the graduation rate is going up, but they won't tell you that those children are graduating on eighth grade level,
fifth grade level,
fifth grade in math, and maybe eighth grade in reading.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you the deep dives into that data. You know, our district does a very good job of showing the gloss on the inside, but it's not really a glow on the inside, or gloss on the outside, but it's not showing a glow that's really not there on the inside.
Yeah.
It is the tale of two districts. It is a tale of design inequities that need to be addressed.
Yeah, there's no child left behind.
They left a lot of children behind systemically. It wasn't accidental. And I'm saying this as a leader of some of the toughest environments that we had outside of Nancy B. Jefferson neighborhood schools. And the constant raising that children have social emotional problems, the constant raising that these structures to evaluate schools are inequitable. It just led me to the point that when I got to Dunbar, I said, no more. I'm not going to consistently, we're just not going to keep doing this. I'm not going to allow you to continue to disenfranchise these children. And one of the things that they consistently do, they want the principal to be the voice of influence to the community. And as an African American male who have benefited so much from the educational system, and I knew it was wrong, and I just couldn't. I chose not to do it anymore, Chrissy. And I knew that I was going to be attacked. I knew that I was going to be targeted after a while, but I had to just basically speak my truth, which I continue to do. And not only did I speak my truth, I had faith in my own talent that I know that I can put things in place. Chrissy, we went from like 230 kids to close to 500. My increase in enrollment brought the school over $1 million. I put a lot of different things in place. I celebrated a teacher that who had been there for 33 years and named a music studio after that. We did what we did with Larry. We did what we did with aviation. All the things that's going on in this city for black boys. Here it is, a 19-year-old black boy got his private pilot's license, and he's a small aircraft mechanic. And
nice.
If CPS would have supported it, we could have did that for hundreds of black boys, especially on the south side of Chicago. I had put programs in place to make sure that I was connecting elementary schools to high schools.
Love it.
You know, because everything needed a feeder system. But if you look at our district, the only thing that feeds into the feeder system are selective enrollment schools. We have academic centers.
Yeah.
Vocational schools don't have those centers for 7th and 8th graders. STEM schools don't have them.
No.
Military schools don't have them. So that's exactly what CPS wanted to push. You know, this college or bus mantra, it failed us.
It did.
It actually did. The research from University of Chicago says 73% of the students at Chicago public schools actually don't go to college or don't finish. But they'll scale to you exactly what's going on. And again, Chris, everything I'm saying, you can fact check it. And for the listeners in the audience, go to To and Through program from University of Chicago. They'll tell you the truth about Chicago public schools. So it's not anything that I'm just saying. Check the data for yourself. It's right there. It will give you the synopsis of everything that's going on. So a lot of the things that we've done, Dr. Gibson and Brother Abdul, we took on Chicago's most challenging schools.
Yeah.
See, when you think about what it is that you have to have, why is it that Brooks campus don't look like fingers? You know, at the end of the day, why would a child choose finger over Brooks and everything looks a certain way? That just didn't happen. You know, when you look at New Western House, when you look at Marshall, it doesn't look the same. But you know, I call them holding cell schools because you have to have those places because you got Whitney Young, New Crane, and you have Whitney and Western House. So the children who can't go, you have to have Marshall. You have Morgan Park, Carver, and Brooks on the south side, you have to have finger because they have to have some place to go. But those children are not getting what they need. It's a very inequitable system. And I was like, I'm not going to continue to do this. So I went on my own. I made sure that I put programs in place. I made sure I did my own recruiting. And I tell Chicago public principals all the time, if you are not branding your school yourself, you're going to have a major problem. You have to go out and recruit. You have to go out and market. The biggest thing that's going on in CPS now that's across the district is an enrollment problem. In 2025, you're going to have some consolidations and closing. And if you do not have children in your building, your instructional practice won't mean anything because you won't have anybody to instruct. So as we think about all these different things that principals have to look at, the biggest reason why I'm doing it, Chrissy, is that I want to make sure that other people don't go through what I went through. The discrimination, the disenfranchised, and the rejection and neglect. And I want to make sure that principals remove their fear of speaking up. Yeah. Your voice is your birthright, and we got to get a point where we learn how to use it.
Oh, love it, love it. Thank you for sharing that information. I'm currently looking over the website, and I know that we currently have a new mayor who just so happens to also be Black and from the West Side. Have you reached out to Mayor Johnson in your efforts to what's currently going on? Because if I'm not mistaken, he is worked with CPS as well, correct?
He was once a CPS teacher. He was an employee of the Chicago Teachers Union.
Okay.
For at least, I would imagine, the last 10 years.
Okay.
So yes. But the question of have we reached out? Yes, we've reached out multiple times. The day he was inaugurated, we actually got a phone call.
A phone call from him?
A Zoom, no. He showed up to someone we know got him on the line with us.
Okay, nice.
We got about maybe 10 minutes with him.
Okay.
Explain what was done to these principals. And heard nothing back from him at all. Nothing. That's when I went to the Board of Education to publicly state that the board or that the law department had been fabricating cases against Black principals. When Abdul Muhammad says that there were 83 lies, those 83 lies are a part of an investigative report.
Okay.
Against him. Kimberly Gibson, our principal here, she also has her investigative report. It's important to note that neither one of those reports was given to them when they were removed. They had to fight for them. Right? So they removed them and did not tell them what they were charged with, and did not give them not only did they not give them the evidence of what they were charged with, they didn't even tell them what they were charged with.
I'm hearing a very similar story right now, just based off of a situation that happened with a colleague that worked in the water department. Like I'm hearing pretty much the same thing that's related to what you all experienced dealing with city officials. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I know a water department cop that's going through something like that right now. Yeah. It's like the city has a plan for Black people.
Yeah.
But getting back to your question, right? So they didn't tell them what they were charged with. They didn't have their reports. We were able to force them to give Abdul Muhammad his report. Kimberly eventually got her report. Gerald still does not have his report. And so when he says that these 83 lies, they're in this report. And so this report, when you look, let me give you an example of lies, like easily identifiable lies. There's so many, but one of my favorite ones to talk about was the Abdul Muhammad was late for work lie. Like, first of all, why is, like, that's a supervisory issue.
That
right?
is.
That's like, if you're late, your supervisor's supposed to go,
I'm the principal.
Right, but the problem was he wasn't late. Right, so the teacher, she talks about the 7 white teachers. One of them, a man named Ian Brannigan, and I use the term man loosely, said that Abdul Muhammad on December 22nd showed up to work after 8 o'clock.
December 22nd?
Right. It was a snowstorm. It was a day of a snowstorm. It was right before break.
Yeah, I'm like,
that's right before break. The date's not the problem. The time is the problem. So the law department puts it in a report like it's a fact. So if you are an investigator, Miss Chrissy,
Yes.
let's say you are an investigator and you are charged with trying to figure out if the person in front of you, because you investigate, you got to figure out truth from fiction.
Right.
You can't believe everything everybody tells you. So
I
there's
gotta do my
processes. Right. So I tell you, or I'm Ian Brannigan, or Ian Brannigan tells you that Abdul Muhammad showed up to work after 8 o'clock. How do you fact check that? What do you do?
I will, if he has to clock in, I'll go to check.
Right. Everybody know that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The time,
You
the
think,
time sheet.
you think Kelly Tarrant, the investigator,
Did
checked
that?
that?
No.
Oh, but we did. But we did. You know what time he clocked in? 7:46. You know what time that teacher clocked in?
After
him. You think Kelly Tarrant researched that?
No.
And so there are 82 more lies just like that in the report. And so we're talking to the mayor about this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And we don't hear back from him. We actually hear later on that he wasn't too happy with the fact that he had to be on the call, which was very bothersome. Then a couple of weeks later, I went to the Board of Education to put the evidence forward for the fabrication of these cases against these Black principals.
Yeah.
I was physically removed to prevent me from making a statement. The president, the 6'2", 250-pound president, Black president of the Chicago Principals and Administrators Association, the president of the board ordered 3 Black security guards to physically remove me so that I could not make a statement. I've never seen that in the history of the district.
The Negro peon who on the other side sent his dog.
Right, and I'm not the brothers who removed me. Just doing their jobs, right? They didn't try to hurt me. They were actually trying very hard not to get too physical with me, but also do what they were instructed to do. And I remember
because they knew it was right.
I remember telling the brothers, it was like, I'm not moving. So y'all do what y'all gotta do. I'm not gonna fight y'all. I whispered in their ears, like, I'm not gonna fight y'all, but I'm not moving and I'm gonna keep talking, right? And so they physically removed me. Mayor still didn't do anything. I went back the next month. They didn't remove me that time, but they cut off my microphone and shut the meeting down in the middle of my comments. So that's how desperate they were to not let this information see the light of day. They did it in front of the world. And it seems like, and while they were doing this, they were spreading information behind the scenes, rumors to prevent people, because when you remove a principal, people say, well, he must have did something.
Right.
Right. So nobody wants to associate themselves with the people who are accused just in case they might have done something. In addition to that, they're also spreading rumors behind the scenes about charges that don't even exist to scare people away from supporting them and make them think I'm just some crazy man out here throwing wild accusations, right? That's when, through Abdul Muhammad, we were able to connect with Attorney Ben Crump. And when he came in, that changed the game for us because that brought the media out. That brought attention to it. That, because folks know someone's like that is not going to put his name on nonsense.
Yeah.
He had to do his research.
Yeah.
Right. He had this guy talking with us for weeks before he came here to make sure everything. So when they saw his name on it, like, oh, wait a minute, maybe something going on here.
Yeah. And
that's when the momentum began to build. And that's when we began to put things together in the case that look like it's not just 83 lies, but the lies tell stories.
Yeah.
Ridiculous story. And we began to pull together some of the stories behind those lies, like the one Black clerk that they used more than any other 7 white teachers. She was like their mascot, right? That they were using her to basically make any claim, like anytime they needed someone to say something that was a lie, she said it for them.
Pretty much.
And so I began to tell that story. There are several teachers who failed to report sexual assault of students, still in that school right now.
Wow.
And the one man who made one of them report it, they removed it. That man is Abdul Muhammad. Let me say it again. The man who protected the students by ordering the reporting of sexual assault was removed from the school. And 4 teachers, several of them white, who the student went to, Student went to them directly to tell them, and they didn't give a damn enough to pick up a phone and call DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services. CPS still, you're supposed to get fired for that. All 4 of them still.
Yeah.
And
I know.
I
just did it. I just started at a school working, and that's one of the first things that I had to do to make sure I understood if somebody comes to me about something, I need to report it.
Right, and they tell you that you are a mandated reporter.
I am a mandated reporter.
And 4 people who failed to report are still in that school because 2 of them were false witnesses who were part of those 83 lies. And so CPS is protecting the people who made themselves false witnesses for them.
Not surprising.
And again, the mayor said nothing. As a matter of fact, when Crump came to town, some of the mayor's allies tried to get, well, basically, because we were going to have a protest, not a protest, but a press conference at City Hall. And I'm glad I said protest, not a protest, because it was supposed to be a press conference asking the mayor for help, right? Not a protest. Because remember, I've been to CPS twice.
Yes.
And I got removed.
Yeah.
So it's like the next step is the mayor. Help us out, brother. He had his people call Ben Crump to try and move the press conference to CPS so that the attention would not be on him. That's what our mayor, our black mayor, our black male mayor did in response to a press conference seeking his support for black male principals.
That's a lot.
It was a lot to take.
I know. And I can only imagine, because I'm going to be a little devil's advocate, I can only imagine what it's like for him to just get into office and have these different type of situations thrown at him and just being how to navigate through them. Because I know eventually he may want to get re-elected in the future. So I'm just being a devil's advocate. So I really don't know. But
I just want to say something to that, sister. So
go ahead.
And I know my principal colleagues can bear witness to what I'm about to say. When you're in leadership, the more you ignore a problem, the worse the problem is going to get. We've been in leadership for decades, and somebody can come and tell you something. It could be some static between 2 teachers. And if you don't deal with it right then, it's not going to get any better. Or it could be a situation brewing between students or groups of students. When you're in leadership, you don't have the luxury to ignore a problem thinking that it's going to go away, right? So, when we met with the mayor, because I was on the phone, and then we met with the sister who, after that conversation, we met with the sister who set up the call. I said to her, look, the mayor is new and he has a lot of things on his agenda. I mean, he's the new mayor, right?
Yeah.
In a city with millions of people.
Yeah.
I said, this is something that we can go into a room and we can figure this thing out in a room. It doesn't have to be something big. This is before all this other stuff happened.
Yeah.
So, and I said that to her, hoping she would share that with him. But anybody in leadership knows is if you ignore a problem, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
So as a black principal, black leader who's been lied on, if I did something wrong, sister, I'm not going to rally, quote unquote, the troops. And I know that I'm wrong. I'm going to be man enough to say I shouldn't have done that. And if what I did warrants me to be removed, then it is what it is.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that 7 white teachers concocted over 83 false allegations to have the rightly selected or elected principal removed from a black school in front of black children. That is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with white fragility, right? But we're also dealing with the level of arrogance that white people have to think that they can come in our communities and dictate what happens in our community.
Right.
We can't, as these 4 black educators right here, we can't go to Pilsen right now and tell the Latino community who can be the leader in the Latino school.
Yeah.
We can't go to any other community. We can't go to the North Side and tell the white teachers in the white community who's going to be the principal in that school.
Yeah.
We can't go anywhere in Chicago and dictate in anybody's community, not Little Italy, not Polish Town. We can't dictate.
No.
But everybody thinks they can come in our community and dictate in the Black community who can be the leader of a Black school in a Black neighborhood that's been elected by a Black LSC. So this is the fight. And it's not about like, it's not, okay, well, we're just trying to get our jobs back. Absolutely not. When you take Kimberly Gibson and Gerald Morrow out of the school, what are you just taking the individual out? Or are you taking out all that individual would do to create pathways for student success?
Yeah.
Every time I turn on the television, every time I listen to talk radio, all I hear is people talk and complain about what these young people ain't doing, how they need to pull their pants up, how they going downtown twerking on cars, and somebody need to do something. And there's always somebody else and not the person that's talking.
Yeah.
Well, you have in front of you 4 educators who are doing something. The very problem that we complain about with our children, we're actually in the schools doing something. So when you take a Gerald Morrow out of Dunbar, then that's intentional to cause the successes that he created at the school to collapse. And then the fights to start again, right?
Yep, for
then,
all of you, honestly.
Right, and then the programs that he put in to get people trades and pathways to success, for those programs to be moved out so that you can replace it with a program and all you get is a certificate, but you can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So it's bigger than the individual. What we're fighting for is the minds of our children. Everybody who saw that fight that took place in Alabama, right? In Montgomery, they saw the brother on the dock, and all he did, as Dr. Gibson said, all he did was hold somebody white accountable. He was just doing his job.
Yeah.
And because that white man didn't want to be held accountable for what he had done, then him and his friends decided to jump the brother. But that brother had the sense enough to throw his hat in the air, right? That's the new bat signal.
It is.
And then Black people came out of everywhere to defend this man, right? Yeah. So now what we're asking our people to do is, here we are on the dock of Black education. And we're not fighting because somebody is being arrogant or disrespectful and tried to punch us. We're fighting for the minds of Black children. It's a greater fight than what happened in Alabama. Yeah. It's a greater fight than what the brother was doing with the chair that we post on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. That was a great fight. Yeah. It made Black people feel encouraged. But the fight that we're in is a greater fight because we fighting for the minds of Black children. We're fighting for the future of our community. And we're here to throw the hat in the air. And what we want our people to do is join this fight. And you can join this fight by going on justiceforabdulmuhammad.com. You can go on justiceforabdulmuhammad.com. All of these details that we're talking about there is right on the site. But we can't just be spectators in the fight, right? Now, I've been in fights, right? Yeah. Like, I've been like where somebody was about to jump on me. And my man was like, he was next to me. And then he wasn't next to me. Like, what? Look, that's not the kind of fight.
We don't need them type.
Right. We don't need, so you see us fighting on the dock of Black education. We want y'all to join the fight. The way you join the fight is by going to justiceforabdulmuhammad.com. There's a petition. You can sign a petition. There is, if you want to make a donation, you can make a donation. And right there on justiceforabdulmuhammad.com, you can click on Mayor Brandon Johnson's name and email him right from the website. So we don't want you to be a spectator in this fight. We want you to join the fight by signing the petition. If you can make a donation, and also click right on the website, justiceforabdulmuhammad.com, click on the name Mayor Brandon Johnson. That's all you got to do. The email is going to populate on its own. You don't have to write anything. And you just click send. Let Mayor Johnson know that he needs to do something about the unjust and illegal removal of Black principals from Chicago public schools. That website is justiceforabdulmuhammad.com.
Chrissy, I want to add to that.
Please do.
One of the things that we're fighting against is an institution. You look at the presidency,
the machine.
It's an institution. You look at the mayoral office. It's an institution.
Yes.
So when we think about one person, there's still a city council.
Yeah.
There's still a city council that has an education committee.
Mm-hmm.
There still is a Black caucus. There's still our community groups out there in the African American community where we have served their children.
Yeah.
And I'm just one of the mindset, I'm not looking for anybody else to come save us until we decide to save ourselves.
Period.
So at the end of the day, one of the things we also doing is we're trying to put together a collective voice. And the collective voice is not just about what has happened to our to some Black leaders, but what is the educational agenda in the African American community?
Yeah.
We have not asked that question, nor even put a framework and a structure together to answer it. Because when you answer that question, you will make sure that your African American leaders who've done outstanding jobs will not be targeted. You'll make sure that your Black boys who are not reading in 3rd grade get the supports that they need. You'll make sure that the Fingers, the Marshalls, the Phillips, and those schools of the world who have been disinvested in will get what they need. So my rallying cry is not only for justice for us, because children have been affected, but the African American educational system, outside of the children going to selective enrollment, they are in a crisis. And nobody wants to elevate it to that stance of a crisis. But my call to action is not just for the African American community. Chicago, hear me and hear me well. Chicago is in a crisis because we are having hopeless and skillless children.
Ooh.
And if you don't teach them how to set a fire, they'll burn your stuff down just to keep warm. You know, there was a time in history where they wanted to put drugs in a certain community, but that one community, the drugs spread out. Same thing right now. You thought that you just weren't going to educate the children at Autumn Gresham. You thought that you wouldn't educate the children in Argyle Gardens. You thought that you wouldn't educate the children in in Lawndale. But what happens is when you didn't educate those Black boys 15, 16 years ago who couldn't read, they're now 20 to 21. And they're operating in a hopeless mindset. And that hopeless mindset, they're going into Gucci now.
Yeah.
That hopeless mindset, they're going on Michigan Avenue now.
Yeah.
Right.
They're going in Pirellis now and smashing and grabbing. So Chicago, if you really want to address your safety issue, do understand what caused your safety issue. Because we've had teenage moms before. We've had housing projects before.
Yeah.
We've had gangs before. We've had drugs before. But what we have not had was the miseducation and uneducation of marginalized children in this city the way we've had the last 20 to 25 years. Chicago, wake up. If you do not wake up, the next 25 years will be the same way, and it'll be worse. You know why? Because there is more access to guns. There is more access to that mindset of zero conflict resolution.
Yeah.
There is that mindset that I'm not going to live past 21, and I don't care if I take 5 of you all with me.
Yeah.
So if you think that you just had to raise the bridges up now to keep them from downtown, you'll get to a point where you will not be able to stop them. So Chicago, not only the African American community, we're holding everybody accountable to having these hearings and investigation of what has been done to our most marginalized students and our most marginalized families and our most marginalized schools for the last 20 to 25 years. College or bust did not work. And we're seeing the cause and effect of it not working. And it will only get worse unless we have the courage to disrupt and dismantle the structures that cause these inequities, Chrissy. But here's the biggest thing. We have to have the courage to disappoint the people who wanted to stay this way.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that courage, they'll keep putting policies and laws in place to give it to oppressive mindsets that will only tear this beautiful city down. We are in this place for a reason.
Yeah.
And the number one cause is not lack of family structure. The number one cause is not because Black men are in jail, because there's plenty of Black men who take care of their family.
Yes.
The number one cause is the uneducation and disinvestment in our most challenging environments, and it is the chickens have come home to roost. That is exactly what we're saying. And children cannot be what they cannot see. If they cannot see a strong Black man, they will not become a strong Black man.
Absolutely.
We are the only culture, Chrissy, that wants other people to come in and tell our Black boys how to be Black men. You don't look at other nationalities and ethnicities. They do not let any other nationality tell their boys about their culture. Until we get back to doing that and acknowledge that Black men are not so disenfranchised where they can't lead and they can't be quality fathers and they can't run communities, that notion is not true. So we're going to keep on going forward, and we're going to keep addressing this institutionalized oppression and systemic racism.
Yes, right. I love that.
And I want to emphasize too, right? Yes, there is a racist element to the cases here.
Yes.
Right? Because these people were targeted. right? And these people, like, it's like the management officials, they want to see an outcome, right? And that outcome for some schools is success, and for others is failure.
On purpose.
Right? On purpose. And we'll get to that later. But you know, whoever you are in that seat, if you white, because I know a white principal who's in Bronzeville, killing the game, like enrollment up, scores up, and she was removed because that was not a school. It was in Bronzeville, right? It was supposed to. Like, let me back up and give you a little context here.
I think I understand where you're going, but please share. And
well, I got to give your audience some context.
Yes, please.
This is all taking place within the context of, we know they closed 50 schools. We know they closed hundreds before that, right?
Yeah.
And we know that most of those schools were in communities that were in which Black people reside.
Yes.
Right. We know they came after those schools in
full
force, putting charters everywhere to try and under-enroll the schools, and then when that worked, close the schools down, right? But we also know that some schools, like Dunbar, right, despite all the obstacles that were put in its way, because of strong leaders like Gerald Murrow, managed to rise up. Because remember, the thing that they used to close the school, they used two things: test scores,
yes,
and under enrollment.
Yep.
So since Gerald started recruiting kids from selective enrollment elementary schools to come to Dunbar. Now, if you're getting kids from selective enrollment elementary schools to come to Dunbar, guess what? Test scores gonna go up.
Yes, they are.
Right? So they're not gonna have that excuse anymore to try and close it.
Strategy.
Plus, he's getting hundreds of more students to come to Dunbar. So they're not gonna have that under enrollment.
Right.
To back it. Like now, we don't have any reason. We got these two reasons we've been telling everybody that we're gonna close schools down. And this man has just took both reasons away from us for Dunbar, right? And so you got him doing it at Dunbar. You got Abdul doing it at Limblom. You got Antonio Ross doing it at Hyde Park. You got Charles Smith. Like, you got these strong Black male leaders all across the city. And if they'd given Kimberly Gibson a chance, I know she would have been doing it too at Harriet Tubman, right? You didn't even finish your first year, is that right?
No, I completed my first year.
You did?
And
Okay.
half of my second.
But you got these schools that no matter how many obstacles they put in their way, they're finding a way. And so these leaders who were beating the odds all got removed. Now, what's in common is not just that most of them are at Black schools, but they're all in areas where the communities are being gentrified.
Yep. Bronzeville is definitely one of them.
And so it's like what it appears to be is like, why would you want a school? If you're trying to gentrify a community, that means getting who out? Who you want out? If you're trying to gentrify a community that's Black, who do you want out of the community?
The Black people.
Right? What's keeping the Black people in the community?
Yep.
Will they leave if they have a good school?
No.
Will they leave the community if they have a good school? If they have a school, if their school gets shut down, will they then be more likely to leave?
Yeah, no, and if I'm not mistaken, just the housing prices that are around the school affects as well. So I know what I'm trying to say, just the value of what's happening around that school increases the property taxes, the property value, and so forth.
If it's a good school, property taxes are good. The property values are going to go up because everybody want to move there. Because that was like that with me at Blaine. Blaine was the number one. We got Blaine to be the number one neighborhood school in the city. And I used to play around with my parents and tell them, you're welcome for me increasing your property value.
Okay. But that's major.
Right. So what's happening in these communities, what appears to be happening is that we need these people out of here, but they won't leave because they got these schools. So we need to take away their hope, and their hope is being fulfilled, or their hope is being encouraged by these strong Black leaders, right?
Yeah.
So we have that happen. But then there's another side. My first point, even though this particular iteration is about Black principals. The problem does not have color. The problem is that vulnerability of that position.
Yeah.
Right. The problem is that that position has no protection. So most white principals feel that anxiety. Most white principals won't speak up publicly. Right. Most white principals, if they are in a school that's under the road. Now, you got some principals who are in these schools that they do everything for. But you do have some white principals in schools that are not well resourced. And they know they need to speak up.
Yeah.
And they won't speak up for their children because they are afraid for their jobs.
Yeah.
Right? You can't, that is a system that I wouldn't even call it broken. That's it's doing what I would say it was broken, but it's doing what it was designed to do.
Yeah.
Right? That system needs to be broken apart and redesigned.
Yes.
So although there's a racism element to these cases, in the bigger picture of things, the folks who manage CPS just need to have full control and power, and they do it by making that principal position as vulnerable and unprotected as possible, and that needs to change for all schools and all children.
Yeah, I'm just over here thinking, just knowing the fact that the individuals, as far as the principals and the schools and the system of that's going on right now, I remember saying that, and we look at all the judges and the police officers or the fire department, like if we really changed our community, where would their positions be? Like, what would they really be focusing on and getting these top dollars in regards to these different situations, or even the jail system, like the money that's flowing through the jail system. So it's like we want to dismantle the system that they created, but it funds so much of their lives and just the world, I would say, to a certain degree.
And I'd also say more than dismantle, just transform, right?
Mm-hmm.
The system needs to be transformed. Like you can't have folks, when I say unprotected, let me give you an example. If I have some discipline against a teacher, an accusation against a teacher, there are processes in place.
Yes.
So that I have to prove that you did what you did. Right? So the law department, whoever's investigating, it doesn't end with them. So the teacher can have a grievance process where an independent observer can take a look to see whether or not this is a case of a bad teacher or the teacher having a bad supervisor. Right? So they get that, so they have that protection to make sure only the bad ones are removed, and we're not removing good ones because they're standing up to bad supervisors. Right? Principals do not have that. And they do not have dozens of other protections that other staff members in CPS have to ensure that if someone comes after their job, that they can only come after it for performance reasons and not political reasons, not personal reasons, not monetary reasons. Those protections are in place for everyone except the principal and the assistant principal.
Wow. Ms. Kimberly, it looked like you wanted to say something to my last statement.
Yes, I just wanted to add, we're in an educational hospice. That's what's going on. We're just holding children in these schools. Kids are not getting the service and the education they need in all schools. We really need to look at the diversity, the equity, and inclusion. CPS says that's what it stands for, but it's not. The system's not set up to educate our children. And as a Black leader, as a Black woman leader, it shouldn't matter whether I'm in a Black community or a white community. My name is Dr. Gibson. I have a doctorate degree. Wherever I go, I should be able to be the principal and not be judged by the color of my skin. But like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, by the content of my character. I have a superintendent license. But what do? Try to make Black women or Black men be angry and incompetent. And I'm here to tell you, with us four sitting up here, that's not the case. These things need to be investigated. We've experienced investigation harassment. 11 staff members lied on me. After one social worker was removed, she decided to organize using the CTU to come up with lies. and say that I jeopardized student safety and that people have reported it to me. But CPS has an OIG report that says when they pulled all of my emails, over 2,000 and something, not one said failure to report or any of the accusations. So you please tell me, Chrissy, why are you sitting here looking at a Black woman who was on disability, who was removed while on disability, who was removed one day after 5 white parents showed up to a board meeting where they wouldn't allow my CPAA president, Troy, to speak, but they allowed these 5 white people and a Hispanic woman to speak against me and besmirch my name, say that I'm jeopardizing student safety and I need to be removed. And the next day, I had my contract terminated while on leave.
Again, you can't do that to any other position in the system. If any position needs to be protected, it's the leader.
Yeah.
Because when the leader gets removed, it's like taking a dominant parent out of a household, right? What's going to happen in that household? Like, there's going to be a bit of chaos. There's going to be instability,
Yes.
right? The principal is the dominant parent. The principal is the one that brings order. The principal is the one that sets the direction. When that principal, particularly a strong one, is removed, right, everybody in that school suffers if that principal was good. And
right
now, that's what's happening.
The domino
good
effect
ones are being removed. And so we have to shore up those weaknesses so that we can transform our district.
I'm curious to know, with the schools that you're transforming, like how much money are they making off of those students who go through the prison to pipeline system? I'm just curious to know that dollar amount.
I don't understand the question.
It wasn't really more of a I'm curious to know, because you all are transforming schools, right? And those particular individuals, if they basically can end up being the troublemakers, right? Or
Who's the
students.
The student?
Yeah, the students, based off of the schools and neighborhoods that you all work in, and knowing that the crime or the violence or the enrollment and absentees, like most of the cases, those students are the ones that end up in prison or deceased, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, understanding the prison, the pipeline system, my curiosity makes me want to follow the dollar of how much money do they make off of each student, knowing that if I get the student to end up in jail versus following his dream,
I think I definitely understand your question, and I think there's several layers to this question.
Yeah, it is.
So one of the layers is when Brother Gerald gives a 19-year-old a pilot's license, right? He puts a barber college in his school. He puts a cosmetology, right, school in Dunbar, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm able to become a barber. I'm able to become a pilot. I'm able to become a beautician. And now I can make money, right? Or I can go to college and enter the job market. But every person that he touches and creates a pathway for is now competing with a white child for a job, right?
Yeah.
So now one way, because what we have to understand is that in America, the police department, education, the fire department, these are white jobs programs, right?
Yeah.
These jobs were created for the white middle class who didn't have college degrees. Why they telling us college, right? They have a whole class of people who can make $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year or more and didn't go to college. Now I'm going back to your previous point. I looked at the crime rate in Chicago from 1995 to about maybe 2018. If you track it, crime has gone down almost every year from 95, almost every year.
Okay.
But if you look at police overtime, it's gone up every year. How are we justifying millions into billions of dollars in police overtime if crime has gone down almost every year? That's just a sidebar point, right?
Yeah.
To what you said earlier. So now if Gerald is creating pathways for children, then they become competition for white people's children, right?
Right.
So now how do we prevent them from becoming competition for white children? Then we have to construct the school to prison pipeline, right?
Yes.
And in that school to prison pipeline, we have to be able to make money from the children that cannot read on grade level, right?
Right.
So now I can't read. I didn't have a great principal like Gerald. I had, the research says that it takes 7 good teachers to make up for one bad teacher. I'm gonna say it again. It takes 7 phenomenal teachers to make up for one bad teacher. Look at Malcolm X. Malcolm X, what did his teacher tell him? Oh man, Malcolm said, I want to be a lawyer. He came to him with his vision for his life.
Yeah.
And the white teacher didn't care nothing about Malcolm and his vision for his life. He looked at him as just another N-word, right? And he said, oh, you'll never be a lawyer. Your own people are not going to hire you, and white people will certainly not hire a black lawyer, but you work well with your hands. You should be a carpenter. That day, Malcolm X dropped out of school in the 8th grade. But what did he do? Did he become a productive member of society?
No.
He turned to the streets. The same exact thing that happened to Brother Malcolm that took him from Malcolm Little to Detroit Red to Dirty Red.
Yep.
To when he got into prison, he became Satan in prison. That's how bad this man was at the other prisoners. The pedophiles, the bank robbers, the gangbangers, the serial killers looked at Malcolm, and he was so bad they called him Satan. It wasn't just regular people calling him Satan. It was convicted criminals that looked at this man and said, nah, this man is Satan. So that is what happens to all of these young black people, right?
Uh-huh.
But now here's the part that we want to see, right? How much money is being made in these prisons, in the school to prison pipeline? If I go to prison,
how many people getting paid?
We getting 3 meals a day in prison. The same Airmark that serves Chicago Public Schools serves prisoners. So Airmark is getting 3 meals a day in prison. How much money is Airmark making if we have in America 2 million people locked up and they're getting 3 meals a day? That's 6 million meals in one day. If they're getting $1 a meal profit, that's $6 million a day times 365 days. Your audience can do the math, right?
Yeah.
So now when I get sick in prison, then there's medication for me when I get sick. I don't have to pay for the medicine when I get sick in prison. Somebody else is paying for the medicine. So the pharmaceutical companies are profiting. The food companies are profiting. When I go to prison, I got a bathroom in the corner, right? It might just be a sink and a hole in the ground, right?
Yeah.
But somebody had to put that sink there, right?
Yeah. For
2 million prisoners, somebody had to dig that hole and put this aluminum or whatever it is, right? So we have to look at all of the money that is being made off of
that one person. Being locked
so I'm in jail for 20 years and I'm eating food for 20 years. I'm using the bathroom for 20 years. I'm smoking cigarettes for 20 years. And now check this out. We have a cell phone and our bill is extremely cheap because we on the outside. But when you go into prison, I got collect calls from prison before and then got the phone bill. And I was like, what the hell is this, right? So now the phone companies are making money.
Yeah.
Hand over fist from prisoners calling relatives. So you mean to tell me everybody is getting paid from black folks getting locked up except black folks? The bail bondsman is getting paid from black people getting locked up. The lawyers getting paid, right?
The correction office.
The correction office, they put prisons in certain neighborhoods. Why? Because the prison itself becomes a white jobs program.
Yes.
Because now the guards are now standing over black people. The warden is white. The guards are white, right? The people who are doing the facilities and cleaning and built the prison itself, the construction company is a white. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a pipeline of black children going to prison that's causing everybody to eat. So if I go into a school, right, and I go in and I shut the pipeline down, right?
Yep.
If Gerald goes in and he shuts the pipeline down, if Kimberly Gibson, Dr. Gibson goes in and the spigot is turned off, then those who are getting paid from the school to prison pipeline have a problem with that. So this is why in this society, the things that lead to prison are incentivized for black children, but they're not incentivized for white children and they're not incentivized for Hispanic children. Now listen, if I build a hotel, right?
Yes.
I'm a construction engineer and I build hotels. When I build it, I can ask your audience a question. Do you want, if I build it, do I want that hotel empty or do I want that hotel full? If I build it, I want it as full as I can get it, right?
Yeah.
So now if I'm closing schools and building prisons, the intent of the builder is always the same. Nobody builds something for it to stay empty.
Right.
If I build a mall, I want people in it, right? If I build an airport, I want people in it. If I build an apartment complex, I want people in it, right? If I build City Hall, I want people in it. If I build something, I want people in it. So if I shut down schools and build prisons, what am I saying? Do I want those prisons empty?
Nope.
Or do I want those prisons full? So now, if we know that the builder wants the prison full, then the question is, who they gonna fill the prison with? Are they gonna fill it with white children whose parents and communities have created pathways for them? Even if you didn't graduate from college,
Yeah.
even if you couldn't read and write. I remember I was watching the news one day in Chicago, and they did some type of investigation, and there was a white 19-year-old boy making $60,000 a year in construction. He was holding a flag, and his father's uncle, somebody hooked him up. He's 19, making $60,000 a year
through the door.
in the door. Now we don't have, our children don't have that kind of hookup.
You get 20 at the moment.
So when the
14
prisons are built, are they built for the white child who if his father's a police officer, he gonna get the hookup.
Yeah.
If his father's in the fire department, he getting the hookup.
Yeah.
If his father's doing whatever, he's getting the hookup. Is it gonna be the Hispanic parent? Is that who they building it for? Who, if I'm getting my grass cut, because in the Black community we like to hire Latinos to cut our grass. And then we look out the window like, man, laughing like Hector's out there cutting my grass, but everybody's working. It's 5-10 people out there cutting the grass, and they doing the whole block.
The whole block.
And we drinking Kool-Aid laughing, but everybody's eating. So it's not the Latino brother and sister that they building these prisons for.
Nope.
It's the one who's nobody's talking to these young people. Nobody's giving them guidance and direction and instruction so they can direct their life down a path of success rather than a path of failure. So that's what they building the prisons for, and that's young Black people. This is why people like Brother Gerald, Dr. Gibson, myself, are threats to a school-to-prison pipeline system.
Absolutely.
Because we turn the spigot off. We create pathways. We give students knowledge and wisdom and guidance and direction, and create these pathways for them to go down, and that prevents them from going down this prison pathway that has already been laid down. I'm just gonna end with this. It's 3 paths that's out there for young Black people. It's prison, the military, or the cemetery.
Ooh.
Those are the 3 paths. So now here we are trying to create it's really a fourth path,
one. Yeah.
but it's been hidden from them. And that is the path of education, whether that be a trade, whether that be a career, whether that be college, that is the path. And that's the path that we've been putting young Black people on for the last 20 or 30 years in the city of Chicago.
I love
Chrissy, one of the things that we need to see is the how.
Yes.
Everybody who's listening, if you went to Weston House, if you went to Dunbar, you went to Simeon, you went to CVS, you went to Prosser.
Right.
If you think about 30, Julian,
right.
If you think about 30, 35 years ago, there used to be state assessments for welding, plumbing, HVAC, electricity.
Oh, yeah.
You could graduate from high school as a licensed, state certified electrician. Those used to be in school, just like right now. They still have cosmetology and barbering. But the main things that the white unions ran, they lobbied to take them out of schools.
Yeah.
And when you look at the African American community, it wasn't the professional people who sustained our communities. It were the people who were the streets and sanitation workers. It was the plumbers, it was the carpenters, it was the welders,
electricians.
So mechanics. And these were the things that our children learned in school.
Yeah.
I have an uncle right now he's been fixing on cars since he was 15. He has his own shop, own touring business. And this is something, he wasn't great in school as far as English and math, but that was his pathway. And Julian High School provided him with that pathway. And 40 years later, he's thriving in it. But now when you go back and you look and you say, where are those programs? They've been systemically removed. So to be able to starve success and feed the prison pipeline, take away the main entities of the income. Because at the end of the day, if all of us went to college, it's still not going to be enough jobs.
No, it's not.
So, at Dunbar, I built a model called college and or trade, your choice, you choose. I had a young lady who graduated with a cosmetology certificate, but also went to Howard. So I wasn't teaching them to stand behind a head for 30 years. I was going to teach them how to buy the entire strip mall.
Period.
So that's the thing. That's the mindset that when you want to stop the prison pipeline, these were the things that people like myself and Abdul and Dr. Gibson were actually doing to make sure the first thing we instilled was hope. The second thing was that you can do this. We looked them in the face and we held them accountable to being something and being great. So they got to a point, Chrissy, where they didn't want to disappoint us. All right, Mr. Morrow, I got you. I understand now. I see why you pushing me the way you pushing me. You pushing me out of love because you believe in me more than I believe in myself. So we were directly not only attacking it emotionally, we put structures and systems in place and challenged those structures and systems to make sure those children had a chance in life so that prisoner pipeline will be broke. And I wanted to add that not only did they go after us, they went after our local school councils in my school and at Lindblom.
Wow.
They called them in under investigation because they wanted to make sure that the elected governing body in those schools would be gone as well. They attacked the leadership at every aspect that they can. Wow. So we want people to know exactly what was done and why it was done, and they spared no expense on who they wanted to attack. It was any type of leadership in those buildings who were going to make sure that those children graduated with hope, and they graduated with access points, they graduated with pathways, and they believe in themselves. And that's the one thing you can't measure with data. Although the data said our children couldn't read, but the biggest piece was you saw boys coming in. I'm just here. When I first got to Dunbar, it was, they basically had a trap house in the back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we not. That's not the standard. That's not the expectation. That's what we're doing here. So when you shift that mindset, you're destroying the prison pipeline.
Absolutely.
And you put those programs in place, and you provide hope, and you provide those pathways. That's lessening that money for Menards. That's lessening that money for those downstate prisons.
Yeah.
Those bus companies that's taking them down there all the time.
Yeah.
We're keeping them here. We're keeping them working, and that has been attacked with a vengeance. And I'll end it with, if we do not use our collective voice and say enough is enough, not only in the African American community, but inside the city of Chicago, we will perish. And the reason why, because you can't do like old man Daley did with shoot to kill. Can't do that anymore. You can't just lock them all up. You can't just do that anymore. So what's going to happen? You still have these people on the street with this hopeless mindset, and they are going to eat by any means necessary.
They're going to be destructive. I had just one more question, and you all brought it up earlier related to, we know that Ram, he shut down 50 schools here in the city of Chicago. Are you all considering taking up one of those schools and creating your own system, your own school for what's currently going on?
Well, you usually have a good response to this.
Now, go ahead,
what I would say is this: one of the things I'm doing as an organizer now is organizing for education, bringing it to the community to say, hey, what do you want to do with this? See, when we look at the Mount Green Woods, we look at the Gale Woods, they don't come in and ask CPS for anything. They tell CPS what it's going to look like in these schools.
Right.
So if you really want to shift that and answer your question, the community has to say, this is what we want to do with that building. The community needs to say, this is what we're going to do with Finger. The community has to be able to speak up for itself, because if we just go in by ourselves, then block your grants and they'll do things of that nature. But one of the things that we know is that we have to hold ourselves accountable, our elected officials accountable, to come up and answer the question. You heard me ask this question earlier. What is the educational agenda in the African American community?
Yes.
And if we begin to answer that question, we'll start looking at the resources we have. Those empty buildings can be a resource, but until we sit down and say, this is what we're going to do with it, and not go in there and ask, it's just going to sit there by itself. It has to be a collective voice.
Great answer.
And I just want to add to that what you said, Brother Morrow. The thing is, who owns those buildings, Chrissy? Who owns those 50 school buildings?
I think the last time I checked, it was CB something E or whatever, but that was a while ago. But I know that's a white company somewhere.
They were formerly Chicago Public School buildings. They got shut down. So we got to ask ourselves, what's the agenda for those buildings?
Right.
Is it for us to educate, or do we need to find our own buildings, rally up the community, build the blocks and start our own schools.
The CBE group, that's who they were.
So I just wanted to add to that. I think that definitely agree with what Brother Morrow and Dr. Gibson said. You know, we have a fight that's in front of us right now in the schools for our children. And it's not just in the public schools, but we have right now in the city of Chicago about 350,000 students in Chicago public schools, and about maybe 35% of those students are Black. And with those students, CPS and the city of Chicago also has those tax dollars that go with those students, right? So what we want to do in organizing our community, like Brother Morrow said, and developing this agenda, and when we open those schools in our community, we definitely need those tax dollars that's attached to those Black children to go to any school that we open up for our people. So we definitely, that's definitely an option. We've always had independent schools in our community. That's always been the case. And that's always going to be the case. And what we want to do as educational leaders is put forth an agenda for all Black children in Black communities in the city of Chicago. Did you want to ask something?
Yeah. So everybody has a different approach. And sometimes we make the mistake of saying, like we argue, like your approach is better. Like our kids need some everything.
That's
right. No matter who's building,
true.
no matter who's building an independent school, they're going to be Black children in CPS. Nobody's going to build a school large enough to teach 100,000 Black students. And so we can't look at this injustice and throw up our hands and walk away and go, let's just go build our own. We can go build our own, but the fight to ensure that this system that we fund with our tax dollars in our city works for our children and everybody's children. And so that fight has to stay front and center, at least for me.
I understand. Thank you for that, for sure. This has been a phenomenal show, and I greatly appreciate all of you all coming in, sharing your story, and most importantly, getting the word out that of what's currently going on in the systems. Before we close out, are there any final thoughts that you all would like to share? You could share the website. How can someone donate or be involved, or just any final thoughts?
I was going to do the website last if there weren't any before. Yeah.
Sister, I know I speak for everybody. We definitely want to thank you for having us on the show, giving us a platform to share with you and with your listeners what we're going through and not just sharing our stories, but sharing our stories so we can understand as a community what this fight is and how important this fight is for our children and the future of our communities here in Chicago and really throughout the country. So we definitely thank you for being a thoughtful host, asking great questions and giving us an opportunity to elaborate and share what we've experienced and give those insights to your listeners. So we definitely want to thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I echo that, and also thank your listeners for paying attention, for being engaged. If what you can do, a step that you can take, is to contact your alderman. Right, call your alderman's office and ask them to request that the city council hold hearings on what has been done to the principals in Chicago public schools. Hold hearings on why the principal position is so unprotected and why in that unprotected state they have gone after that 8 of the 10 principals that they went after this year were Black. Hearings need to be held on that. They're hoping it goes away. We're not going to let it go away. And if you all contact your alderman, you will be helping us to ensure that it does not go away. This is not going to go away. But I want you all out there to be able to say you are a part of ensuring that it doesn't go away. So that you contact your alderman, that you go to justiceforabdulmuhammad.com. The reason the site's Justice for Abdul Muhammad is because he was the first case we started advocating for. And then the Murrow case got added on, and then the Gibson case got added on. And so we're in the middle of a name change for that, but it's justice right now. It's still justice for Abdul Muhammad, and that means justice for Gerald Murrow, and that means justice for Kimberly Gibson, and justice for all principals in this city. On that site, again, you can send an email to the mayor, but I definitely encourage you guys to reach out to your alderman as well, and you can sign up to be on the mailing list so that this isn't the only time you hear from us. If you sign up on that mailing list, take your time, make sure you put the right email address in there. You will then be in consistent communication with us as we move forward to ensure that justice is served and that our children get the education and pathways they deserve.
I'll add, Chrissy, that we need to understand one fundamental thing. The principalship that most of your listeners are listening to right now is not that principalship anymore. When we went to school, principals had all power. That's not the case. You have all accountability, but you don't have all power. And that's something that we need to talk to our aldermen about. That's something we need to make sure that our principals have the autonomy to do the outstanding work. So as we say, reach out, you're not just reaching out for justice. You're actually reaching out to save your community. You're actually reaching out to save children who need to be served. So that voice is extremely powerful. That's why we have to make sure it's a collective. That's why we have to make sure it's a collaboration to make sure that that every voice is counted. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is not some DEI term that's being thrown around. That is actually valid and is actually being implemented, and people are going to benefit from it. So thank you for your time. This has been a blessing to us, and the platform and the audience that is going to reach. We know something good is going to happen. We know people are listening, and we know they're going to take up that. They're going to make sure that they take up a mindset that, hey, this is wrong, and let's do something about it.
I love it. And between the both of you, I have to ask this question about the alderman. How does going to the alderman will help this situation? What role does the alderman have for those who are not aware and naive?
So the mayor is in control of the school system.
Okay.
Right? Because the mayor right now still appoints the board.
Okay.
Right. The way so you think just call the mayor. But the way it works in the city is that the mayor needs to feel pressure from the people directly below him.
Okay.
Because what happens is, and we've seen this, they were like, oh, and I don't want to mention their names, but someone was saying, we're not hearing anything from the alderman.
Right.
Right. So it's the aldermen who are the mayor doesn't feel pressure from the people like the alderman feels pressure from his constituents. Right.
Okay.
Those constituents call that mayor's office. Mayor's like, yeah, we'll deal with it. A bunch of constituents call the alderman. The alderman is going to be responsive, right? And so if you have everybody calling their alderman, then you got all those aldermen talking to the mayor. And an alderman, if I'm the mayor and a bunch of aldermen coming after me versus a bunch of residents sending me emails, it's a whole different vibe. I feel more pressure when that alderman comes after me.
Okay.
And so the people, we have to use that chain of command. The people need to focus on calling their alderman. And then if the aldermen get enough pressure from the people in their ward, then they're going to be talking to the chair of the education committee saying, hey, we need some hearings. And they're going to be talking to the mayor saying, you need to do something about this because my constituents will not let my phone stop ringing until I let them know I've done something about this. And me doing something about it means pushing you to do something about it because me as an alderman, I don't control the school board. You do.
Okay. Thank you for that. Because I know there's some people out there right now like, okay, what the alderman gonna do?
That's a good question too. Thank you so much because it didn't hit me that folks might not put it together like what is calling my alderman gonna do. So that's a very, very good question. Thank you. Next time I do an interview, I'll make sure I put that out there.
There you go.
And Chrissy, you asked if there's any words we would like to leave with your listeners. And one thing I would like to leave, this is systemic racism in education. It is systemic. It is an attack on education. It's an attack on our children. It is an attack on our communities. My grandmother used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
All right.
Now is the time to make change. Now is the time to stand up. Don't remain silent. Don't let this radio show be the last time that you stand up. We know that this is bigger than the four of us. We know that each one of us have other people out here who have experienced racism and discrimination. Aren't you guys tired? This could be your brother, your sister, your cousin, your mother, your father. The time is now to stand and stand up. Use your voice, your visibility, and your view, and speak out against systemic racism in our community, in our schools, and in this world.
Love it, love it, love it. Mr. Gerald, you got anything? Are you? All right. Well, I appreciate all of you coming in today, sharing your experience. I hope to see nothing but great success from each of you as we move forward in this fight against the system racism that is going on that seems to continue even though we have put certain things in places of like the 60s with the integration, but we seems like we went back further than we've been able to move forward. But again, I just want to appreciate each of you. If you all like to share any social media handles or just the website is okay.
Justice for AbdulMuhammad.com. Justice for AbdulMuhammad.com. If you can't spell it, just Google search it and it'll get you to the right place.
All right. Well, that is my time for this week's show. It's the Principals Edition. And with that, it is.
School is out.
School is out. No, school is in. School is in. Again, I appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you just tuned in, don't worry, you can catch the YouTube
Well, we'll see each other tomorrow. 10:30 early in the morning.